Here we go. We are live. Good evening. It's not morning. It's morning in Australia, and Rosie cannot be with us tonight. This is TMS Roundtable Global. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein, and it has been about a year and a half, and we're always really happy to have Michael join us, who's kind of our sous chef. And today, we have a wonderful guest. We always have wonderful guests, but it's a special guest, and I'm very excited to introduce Nicole Sachs and having us join with Michael Galinksy to talk about all sorts of really wonderful things. So first of all, Baruch haba is welcome in Hebrew. Nicole's going to have a retreat here, Michael, so you're coming back.
Absolutely.
Number 3, Nicole Sachs. I don't know a lot about you, and we got to talk the other night, and it was just delicious and delightful, and I'm so happy I got to connect with you. A lot of our new listeners to TMS Roundtable don't know what journal speak is, so that's the first thing. I'd love to ask you, exactly what it is, because it's just not journaling. It's something very, very special. So please explain that to our listeners.
Well, do you want me to start a little bit with my story? Because I feel like without my story, journal speak doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay.
Please.
So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Nicole Sachs. I am a psychotherapist and an author and a podcaster and a TMS liver and breather. And I worked directly for many years with Dr. John Sarno, who is my mentor and who began as my doctor. So my story, I will make it pretty brief.
No. Details. We want details.
You want details. Okay. Well, I don't know how much time we have, but
we got 2 hours. Nobody's going to stop us. And then
all right.
Painstakingly edit this later anyway.
Okay. So when I was 19, I was diagnosed with a condition called degenerative spondylolisthesis, which is a pretty severe abnormality of the lower spine. Mine was apparently incredibly troubling. The orthopedic surgeons who saw my films used to get really uncomfortable and go pale and look at me with tremendous pity. So we know that I had a very severe case. And I was only 19. I was sort of removed from college and brought home to convalesce. And my mother was incredibly stressed out and terrified that the rest of my life was going to be ruined. And when we finally went to the orthopedic surgery consult, after I underwent all the tests, they said, okay, you have degenerative spondylolisthesis. You will have to stop exercising, stop traveling. You can only sleep in certain positions with a lot of pillows under the knees. It's very, very important. We need you to stop driving in a car for more than an hour because the bumping motion could further degenerate your spine. And the likelihood that you'll have biological children is slim to none because the weight of the baby would pretty much degenerate your spine immediately. You could be in a wheelchair. And they said, you're going to need spinal fusion surgery, which would require, at the time, this was 1990, 6 weeks in a body cast. But they did say that if I lived very small and with tremendous fear, well, they didn't say that, but that I knew, that I could live potentially till 40 without this spinal fusion surgery.
I cannot believe this.
This is the truth. This is what happens.
I keep going screaming out, criminal. It's criminal.
Yeah. It was so surreal at the time, like, because I just was 19 years old and I remember like hearing them like almost like the Peanuts, wah, 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 like the peanut. Hold on, I'm going to take this out because it's bothering me. Almost like the Peanut parents, like they were just, I heard it, but I wasn't willing to completely accept it. So anyway, I went through my life. The way we got through the acute incident is I took steroids and I took muscle relaxers and I took codeine, and somehow it brought me into chronic pain rather than acute pain. So now I was a chronic pain sufferer, a person with back problems. And I was allowed to go back to school, and I lived very small and full of fear. And I remember, like, if I was holding something precious, like someone's baby, I would just like be really panicked and nervous. Like, maybe I should sit down to hold this 8-pound thing, like, because that's probably at the weight limit. So it was that kind of life. It wasn't.
You were full of fear.
I was full. Yes. I was full of fear, and I was full of meaning. So, just having to always look into the future and say, well, what am I not going to be able to do? How can I craft my life to not take more than an hour in a car ride? Something like that. So that went on for a bit. And when I was in graduate, what's that, Michael?
What an incredible amount of distraction it was.
Yes, it was. And it really worked, right? It worked all the shit in my, am I allowed to swear on this thing?
You are allowed to do anything.
Okay. All the shit that had happened in my childhood that clearly I was feeling, it diverted me completely. And I didn't feel any of it. I felt worry about my back, self-pity, and, all the things that come from that kind of situation. And when I was in graduate school for my MSW, so now I was living in the Midwest. I'd finished college and graduated, and I was living in the Midwest. My mother was watching an episode of the Rosie O'Donnell Show at the time that Rosie had her #1 TV show. It was on every day in the afternoon, and she was having an episode called Fix Jeanette. And it was about Jeanette Barber, who was her producer, who had been running around the reservoir in New York City, got a small pain in her ankle, and it radiated and radiated until she was in a motorized wheelchair. Now, Michael, you know about Jeanette's story, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I figured everyone knows Jeanette. So anyway, at the time my mother was watching it, she was watching the follow-up episode. So she wasn't watching the beginning, she was watching the reveal. And so they showed all this footage of Jeanette in the motorized wheelchair, and then they showed the follow-up, which was Jeanette running the New York Marathon. And my mother, in the typical Jewish mother fashion, screaming hysterically with joy and with anticipation, said, "I think I know what's wrong with you. I think you need to read this book, Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno." So I was like, 23, 24. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll read a stupid book, And I got the book. And I used to tell this story all the time on Sarno's alumni panel, which is I didn't read the book because I was 23. I read the front page and the back cover, and I kind of skimmed and found a couple pages. And I said, oh, no, I get it. I'm really angry, but I don't know how to express it. This was the level of consciousness. I'm really angry. I don't know how to express it. So I'm feeling back pain. So let me do a science experiment on myself, right? If this far out thing is potentially real, it'll work. So at the time I was nannying for 4 kids as a way to pay my way through grad school. And so they were, challenging and annoying and whatever it was. And the mother used to sort of boss me and, whatever. I mean, it was a job. And I remember having my back was killing me. And so instead of feeling sorry for myself or focusing on my self-pity, I said to myself, why are you so angry? And this is really the genesis of journal speak, even though I never usually give it this credit. But I didn't write anything down. I didn't even know about journaling. I knew nothing about Sarno. I didn't even read the book. I just knew that I was angry, and somehow I had to feel my anger. And so I attended to what was going on, and I said, well, this job, and it's bothering me, and why should I even have to work? Self-pity. And then I thought, no, I am really angry because I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I have no idea what's going on. And I don't even know if I like this guy I'm living with. And what the hell am I doing in Minnesota? No offense to Minnesota. And I remember just telling the truth in my mind of why I was so angry. And then
nothing, like as a child or what made you connect that? You have no idea.
Not at the time.
Something intuitive, something like you said, a channel, like something's channeling through you.
It was almost like a very immature version of journal speak. It wasn't getting deep. It was just like, what the hell is really on your mind, Nicole? You know, if this Sarno work requires you to get to what's really bothering you, like, what's up? And that was my sort of 23-year-old version of what was up. But the magic of it was I would attend to my pain about 10 minutes later when I got busy with the kids, and I'd be like, my back doesn't hurt. And that was the first awakening, because that was the first realization that maybe there was something to this. And if there was something to this, then I might not be sick. I might not be broken. If it was possible that connecting to my rage was taking away my back pain, then maybe the doctors were wrong and this fate wasn't going to be my fate. And I just decided to run with it. So from the age of 23 till the age of 31 or 32, I had no pain. I had 2 babies, Isabella and Oliver. I exercised till the day they were born. I traveled the world. We went to Bali on my honeymoon. We hiked and mountain biked through Bali, and I had no pain. And I decided that's it. That's not the end of the story. So when Oliver was 10 months old, he was in a walker, and he was toddling around my back deck where I was living the dream in New York. And I was worried that his walker was going to toddle over the 2 steps to the driveway. So I picked it up. I don't have a bad back, so it's no problem. I leaned over and I picked it up. And as I picked it up, it felt like there was a hot knife dragging through my lower back. It was the craziest, like, take your breath away kind of pain. And I set down the walker, and I was in the L shape. And I screamed to my ex-husband, my husband at the time. I said, something just happened to my back. And now all the Sarno stuff, all the 10 years pain-free, all the knowledge out the window. And I am back in the medical model. And I want to bring tremendous empathy to anyone who this has happened to, because we are just human beings. And it is so freaking hard to stay with truth when we are in fear. And I was in deep fear, and I was in deep shame, because in that moment when the back pain came back, what I decided was, this is my fault. I didn't listen to the doctors. Right. I didn't do what I was told. I listened to some ridiculous book that I didn't even read. And now I have ruined my life and, you know, orphaned my children. I really took it.
But what was really going on? Are you going to tell us that?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't worry. I've made my whole life and career out of this. This is not the end of the story. So, all right, I'll speed it up.
No, it's okay. I love the details. This is my first time hearing it. Everyone listening has heard it before, but I have not.
Knows it. Everyone knows it. Hi, guys. I see a lot of names in the chat that I recognize. These are my people. So anyway, I had a year of chronic pain, electric stim treatments 3 times a week in physical therapy, therapeutic massages that always made me hurt worse. I was taking opioids, which made me totally spaced out. I was taking muscle relaxers. I was steroid, Medrol steroid packs. It was a horrible, horrible experience. It was the worst year of my life to this day. And things have happened to me, and it was the worst year of my life. And I was irritable with my children, and I was in terrible self-pity and shame and misery. And the story culminates with me being, this is a very famous story in the Nicole Sachs encyclopedia. I was in a deli, and my kids were misbehaving. They were running around. They were 1 and 3, running around with the gummy bears and the chocolate-covered pretzels and grabbing things off the shelves. And I'm trying to pay. And I got them. I was wrenching it out of their hands. And as soon as I wrenched, they would pick up something else. And they were being 1 and 3. And I paid, and as I took their wrists and I went to the car, I felt my back seizing up and seizing up and seizing up. And by the time I got to the car, I couldn't get my children in the car. And this is in an active parking lot in the middle of the day, and I was absolutely paralyzed. I could not get my keys. I couldn't get my phone. If I let go of either of their wrists, they could have died immediately. Cars were whizzing by in either direction. And I just stood there. And I leaned my forehead on the driver's side window of my car, and I cried. And I sobbed for my ruined life and my miserable choices and my poor children. And it was a real low point. It was the low point of my life. And somehow, and this, anyone who knows about TMS knows that probably I got some emotions out, but somehow I got my kids in the car. I don't really remember. It was real panic and terror. I got them home. I got them to bed, and I sat on my bed and I looked out the back window of my house and the reason I always tell the story the same is I watch the story like a movie when I tell it because it was that profound in my life. I looked out into the black night of the sky and it was like this beautiful starry night, and I surrendered. And I said, what? And it wasn't, at the time, I wasn't even a spiritual person. I was literally like, what? I'll do anything. And what came into my mind is, I wonder if that Dr. Sarno guy is still practicing in New York City.
Wow.
And I looked him up, and he was. And I called him on the phone, and he accepted me as a patient. And I went into the city, and I met with him, and I wrote a book. I wrote a novel of all the times my back hurt. When I move this, when I pick this, this is what happens when it goes down my leg. This is what happens when it goes up my shoulder. And I took it, and I was so austere. I slid it across the desk to him, and he took the packet, and he didn't lose my gaze, and he threw it in the garbage, and he had this like industrial kind of a metal garbage can. I freaking love this man. My connection, my heart to this man is so deep because of just the way he handled it from the very start. He said, "It doesn't matter when your back hurts. Let me examine you." And we went into the back, and he did the whole thing, and he pressed in all the places, and he said, he looked at my film, and he goes, "So this is what they say is wrong with you?" And I'm like, yes. And he said, "There's no way this accounts for down the leg, up the arm, moving from the left to the right." He goes, "There's no way. You have TMS. It's harmless. You're going to be fine." And I said, "Okay, tell me what to do." And I am like the typical A student, perfectionist. I'm all the Sarno qualities, a goodist, all the things. And I said, "Tell me what to do. Everything I'm going to do perfect." So he hands me his packet. He did. Anyone who's been to him knows he makes a drawing of the reservoir, and he says, "This is where your rage is, and this is the line between the unconscious and the conscious mind, and your emotional repressed world is knocking on the door of your consciousness, and it's too much for you. And your nervous system and your brain have decided it is too dangerous, and this back pain is saving your life." And I got it. I really got it that time. I was older. I was more mature, and I got it. And I said, "Okay, how do I allow my repressed emotional world to become conscious?" It became clear to me that all I had to do was become conscious and my pain would go away. That's what I had done in grad school. I just didn't know it, but that's what I had done in grad school. And that's what I needed to do. And he said, the best way to do it is to journal. If you write about your feelings, it slows down. I mean, he didn't say this. This is how I understood it. I don't know what to attribute to him and what to attribute to me anymore because we share the same brain. But I believe what he meant was that, and I teach this, when you slow your thoughts down enough to either type them out or write them out, you open space for awakening, because we have this monkey mind that's going 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time. And it's very hard to come to the little baby epiphanies that need to happen that bring these repressed emotions out. And so he told me to journal. I'm a good student. I do what he says. I make my 3 lists: childhood, daily life, and personality. I bullet out everything that ever happened to me. I bullet out everything on my daily list, my personality. I've got the yellow legal pad, and I'm just going to do the journaling. So I'm starting to do the journaling, and it's a whole lot of nothing. I'm playing my tapes. I'm writing my old stories, that time with my dad, blah, blah, blah. I know these stories, and I'm writing, and I say, all right, let's move on to daily life. So I put motherhood on the top of the page. And I start writing my blah, blah, blah about motherhood. I have 2 babies in cribs. I wasn't expecting this. My ex-husband my husband works all the time. He's never around. And I got a voice, and it's like the lightning bolt that comes from the cloud. And the voice said, "Hey, Nicole, you're lying." And I was like, "No, I'm not. That's the stuff going on in my life." And the voice said, "Nope. That's not the stuff that's going to heal your pain. What's really going on, Nicole?" And I decided in that moment to be brave. And I say to everyone out there listening, if you want to heal from TMS, you have to decide to be brave, because it requires bravery and it requires strength of heart to say the things you need to say that are living under here because they're unconscious. You're in pain not because you feel these things, because you don't feel these things, because you're fighting to not feel these things. And I wrote the first line of journal speak ever penned, which was some version of, I hate being a mother. And it was the most cataclysmic, the acid on my tongue to have to say those words, because I not only had been fantasizing about motherhood since I was 10, I was told by doctors I would never have these children. The shame and the meaning attached to saying I hate being a mother was endless, was bottomless. But I said it and I didn't stop. And I said, I had the wrong children. They scream. They don't like me. I don't like them either. I've ruined everything. And as I'm writing this ridiculous stuff, which now has become journal speak, I realized it began to transform. And this is what's magic about journal speak. It doesn't stay true. So it began to transform. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm writing furiously now. Now it's all coming out. And I'm like, I don't hate a baby. I don't hate my babies. What's going on here? And it moved immediately to tremendous rage at my parents. I hate my parents, the horrible decisions they made. My God, they put me through this and this and this. This is why I'm such a mess. And I blamed and I shamed. And this is very important, that you can't use the superego here. You can't use that voice that says, oh, no. They did their best. Yeah. They did their best. We'll get to that later. This is F them. They made a lot of terrible decisions that really hurt me. They traumatized me, this thing and that thing. And I'm writing it out. And then somehow that started to transform. And I was like, who do you really hate? And then it was, and I don't know how many hours I sat doing this. And this is not what I recommend to everyone. This is just what happened to me. It was, I hate myself. You're a weak loser. You can't deal with this. You can't feel your feelings. What kind of a loser are you? What kind of a parent are you? You can't raise babies. Everyone raises babies. Oh, you hate it. Poor thing. I'm making fun of myself. It went on. And after this epic dump, what came out was great compassion. I really landed in great compassion. And those of you who are saying, well, that's not what happens in my journal speak, please know that obviously I have been somewhat chosen. Okay, call it fate, call it God, and call it anything in between. I am meant to carry this message. So I got a really big helping in that one moment. It does not have to be that way for you to heal. Yes, Scotty Styles, epic dump. Didn't mean it to sound that gross. But point is that I woke up the next morning and my back pain was 80% gone, never to return. Over the next 2 months, I spoke with Sarno. He explained to me what conditioning was. He explained to me why it hurt in the morning, because my brain was conditioned for it to hurt in the morning. And all I had to do was notice it and let it go. I kept doing the journaling. I worked through my topics. I journal spoke on all my topics. I journal spoke about my children, about my career that I wasn't working, about money, about the fact that the reason that I was so upset about my children in the first place is I was expecting my children to save me. I had an unconscious belief. This may have actually been the biggest epiphany. I had an unconscious belief that I had no idea about, that I decided these babies were going to fix my wounds of childhood. What a thing to know. What a thing to not know. And so in that exploration, within about a month or two, my back pain was completely gone, down the leg, up the shoulder, anywhere, and has never returned. It has been now 17 years. And I have gone on. So about 2 months later, I called Dr. Sarno and I said, my brother, what can I do? I want to be of service. I'll do anything. And he said, great, come speak at the alumni panel. It's next week. And I started speaking at it once a month. I would come into New York. I would meet with him. He became a dear, dear mentor to me. I worked with him for years. I spoke with him for years. And then I opened my own practice. He referred into my practice, and the rest is history. I wrote the book. I do the things. I live my life. My life is my message. That's my story.
That's a story.
That it is.
And, at one point I wanted to interrupt, but I didn't want to interrupt. But, one thing to bring it back to Dr. Sarno and yourself, I think in the last week, one thing I've been thinking a lot about, and maybe it comes from actually having that conversation with Rameshwar, but the thing that is missing for most people who are resistant to Dr. Sarno from a science perspective, and they dismiss him as saying, oh, he wasn't scientific, which is nonsense. I think what you're talking about is he was working in a trauma-informed manner before anybody had come up with that term.
Or anyone called it that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think our job now, you, me, and everyone else, is to kind of reframe it in that direction and say, you're dismissing him as woo and nonsense because you said he didn't do randomized controlled trials. But if you actually look at the world around us now, he was also saying, okay, it's not just back pain, but I'm trained in back pain, so I'm going to only treat that. But you should look at it in terms of everything else, including even maybe possibly cancer, right? Because what his insight is this isn't PTSD, big T trauma. This is really just rage from not perfect parenting. So pretty much everybody's going to have this on some level because nobody had perfect parents. There's no such thing. And so I think a lot of times we get caught up thinking, okay, what is this big trauma that happened to me? Well, the big trauma is when you were two, you weren't heard. You weren't comforted in the way you needed. And because of that, you had to learn to take care of yourself. And learning to take care of yourself was repressing those feelings. So yeah, I just think that's his genius. And if we can reframe it in that direction and help people to see that you're not an anomaly, you're everybody, and you don't have to have been in war. But in fact, if you actually look at the people with PTSD from war, they tend to be people who also had trauma in childhood, right? Because they've had a learned response, to have a big response to anything that's fearful. Whereas they may be in a troop transport with somebody, a bomb goes off, 2 people get PTSD. Well, if you actually look at their stories, and this isn't to say that, oh, their parents were extremely abusive. They just didn't get what they needed. And everybody needs
sometimes it has nothing to do with poor parenting. I work with people all the time who are just an energetic mismatch to the parent. So for example, you're born really sensitive and you really need someone to be there with you. And you have these parents who are like super laid and chill and laid back. And so like when you're feeling panic, they're like, oh, you're fine. That's all it takes.
Right.
And that's the thing. That's why there's no shame in it. There's no shame in it at all.
Right. And I think you're also your point of like, it's important to recognize the rage, what you feel at them. But then going back to someone like Ram Dass, as we were talking about before, it's also finding the empathy and forgiving them. And so when I say they're not perfect parents, it's not a judgment. It's nobody's a perfect parent because nobody's a perfect match. Nobody can read a child's brain and understand, or we've all learned what we've learned. And so how do we then learn to respond to that? And it's a lifelong journey, I think. But it means owning your own stuff, right? Like you said, like recognizing, oh, I wanted my children to be basically stuffed animals for me.
To save me.
Yeah, I wanted, they were to be my comfort creature.
But I didn't even know. So, that's the best part. I had no idea. You could have handed me, you could have put me on a lie detector test. And would you say, oh, was that going on? I would be like, are you crazy? No. And that's what's magical about TMS, because when you start to have those kind of understandings about what was under there, your pain goes away. I always tell everybody, your pain, even though you might think it's such a big deal, it's the biggest, littlest part. It's everything till it goes away. But then this work is about reclaiming your entire life. It's about understanding yourself. It's about being a better parent, a better partner, a better worker, a better friend, because you know who you are. And so, that's really my message is, yes, you're in pain. Your pain is an invitation. Your pain is that goes without saying. And that's another thing. But I'll finish my sentence because I always interrupt myself and then I'll say what I want to say. But your pain is an invitation to the precipice of the truths that have been awaiting your acknowledgement. That is what your pain is. It is an invitation, and please see it as such, because when you don't pathologize it, you can see it as this ability to get to this much higher plane. But I want to say the thing about the pain being real. I saw The Guardian put another article out. Did you guys read it? Something about chronic pain is not in your head, every time anyone uses the term in your head, I just get like the twitches, because it's so annoying that we're even having to continue to have this conversation.
Right.
The pain is all real, but what's the genesis of the pain?
Right.
You know, I mean, the brain and the nervous system fire signals that make us feel everything. If you cut off your head, you're not going to feel any chronic back pain. So you need this thing to feel anything. So the question is not, is the pain in your imagination? The question is, what is the genesis of the pain? What is causing the brain and the nervous system to send pain signals? And it's, as Dr. Sarno said in a movie that I once saw called All the Rage, my work is more scientific than surgery. This is absolutely science.
Yeah, and this is so. Actually, I was saying this idea about like reframing it as he was trauma informed before it was even a term. I actually pitched an article just after our conversation. I saw that there was a new editor taking over a post at a big newspaper and said, "Send me your pitches." So I sent him a pitch to maybe write something about Dr. Sarno, and his response was, "It's a little too late to cover Sarno, but maybe I could look at the research that came after him." And just that idea that it's a little too late was just, it was enraging, because like, what do you mean it's too late? You didn't do it. You didn't recognize it. And you're the one who's saying he's unscientific because there's no randomized controlled trials. But then I sent him a list of 15 articles from his own paper by other writers that detail from 1999, 2004, 2011, 2008, 2000, every study that came out that said the scans that you see on an MRI don't work.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of idea that he didn't do randomized controlled trials, so he was unscientific. But here you have all these people doing all of this work without doing any science whatsoever. I mean, they think it's science because they're looking through a scientific machine, but they're telling a story about the data without looking at it. And then there's literally, 300 studies of people doing MRIs, and the radiologist can never tell you with clear consensus who's going to have pain. Sometimes they do have pain if they have a bad looking back. Sometimes they don't. And sometimes they have terrible pain and there's not a thing on there. So there's no actual causal correlation as per an MRI, right?
No.
And then if you go to the cortisone shots, if you look at all the data, are no better than a placebo, and they are dangerous. There was this big article about there was a compounding problem with the steroids. You know, people were making the steroids at these compounding facilities, and one of them created a whole meningitis outbreak. So there's an article about one woman who got the shot and died. So she said, or the story said, she'd been taking care of her husband who had early onset Parkinson's for 11 years while working a job that was running her into the ground. Then she lost her job, which meant she was going to lose her insurance. So she rushed to have one steroid shot and then another, and they didn't do anything. The third one killed her. Oh, and if you're looking at the context, here's a woman who's pushing herself beyond her capacity, but obviously probably has some rage about having to take, she's not in a relationship for the last 11 years. She's taking care of this person. And, you know, if you're not facing that or dealing with it or reckoning with it, that can be enraging. So if you look at it, it's like very clear what the story is, but nobody's paying any attention to that.
Wow.
It's crazy, you know? And so here it is. There's all this data says none of this stuff works, and they still do it.
That's why when I speak to people, often the times one of the first things I say is, this is going to be a bottom-up approach. That you're never going to get this kind of education from big pharma, from the medical model, from the surgical model, from your family doctor. Most likely, this is going to be each person deciding, how long do I want to suffer? Because if you're going to wait to get acknowledgement from the people that you have felt are the ones you trust, if they're continuing to tell you, well, listen, we can do a surgery. I have absolutely no idea if it will change your pain, but we can try a surgery. I mean, who the hell wants to try that, you know?
For $40,000 too. You know?
Right. And with potential
lack of mobility syndrome. Right. Yeah.
And then lack of mobility for life. I mean, if you're going to do what I was supposed to do with get a rod in your spine, you know, I mean, that has long standing effects, even if it doesn't take away your pain. Anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is, you know, I literally look out. I could speak to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I will look out on the crowd and I'll go, I'm speaking to every single one of you guys personally. How long do you want to suffer? It is a personal choice. Life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse. How long do you want to suffer, or are you willing to have that moment of surrender and just say, I'll try it. I'll try anything. You know, belief, do the work, and patience and kindness for yourself. I watch people And now that I'm not in private practice anymore, I'm just doing this kind of all over the world work. You know, I teach retreats, I write books, I have a podcast, I do all the things I do. And I get these emails from people over and over again, every country. I mean, throughout the world, so much diversity. Beautiful. And they say, I was in despair. I was out of all my good ideas. A lot of times people say I was planning my suicide. It gets that dark. They say, if I'm not well by Christmas, I'm going to end it. And I came across your work at 3 a.m. on Google somehow. I started the course. I listened to your podcast, and I'm writing to report that I'm back to work full time, that I'm pregnant with my second child, that I'm getting married. It's amazing. It's the privilege of doing this work is such a great, deep, profound privilege of my life, because this is the way. And so I just will continue to show up and say that this is the way. And it's going to be for some people and not for others. You know, take what you want and leave the rest. Not everybody is going to want what I'm putting down, but enough people will.
Well, I would like to talk about, because I mentioned this to you when we had our little intro, our private, technical talk. And I said there are people that come to Rose and I, and they may say that, the journaling isn't working. I'm not feeling it. And, you had something that I want you to bring up, because there's journaling and there's journaling. So would you talk about that? Because there is a specific, not set of rules, but there's a correct way that people can benefit the most. And then do comment if some people just, the journaling isn't speaking to them. It's not resonating. Is that possible because of the way that they learn, the way that they process?
I would never go as far as to say it's not possible because of the way someone learns, because I want to make it more spacious than that. But I'm going to say something related, which is there are 3 facets to the work: believe, do the work, and patience and kindness for yourself. The journaling is not going to get where you need it to get without the belief and the patience and kindness for yourself. Okay. So if you're still planning on that 3rd MRI, but you're just going to do the journaling, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work the same. I won't say it can't work at all, but I really encourage people to either find your way to belief or to suspend your disbelief, the way you would if you were going into a science fiction movie, right? If you're going to go into a science fiction movie and the whole time you're going to say, this could never happen, whatever, this is dumb, people don't fly, you can't go into space. What kind of fun are you going to have? You suspend your disbelief because you want to be present. So, I mean, sometimes it's about suspending your disbelief to be in the space where the journaling can help you. Michael, I see you having a thought.
No, I mean, I think that's so important, this kind of idea about belief. And it's really not so much believing, it's suspending disbelief, right? Like, we feel safer if we're skeptical. And so that's a lot of the science people, like, well, I'm skeptical because I need to see the science. But part of the way science is structured is it's from a completely physical perspective at this point. And it wasn't when Dr. Sarno started practicing. In fact, he talks about the research he saw into rheumatology and all these other things that people thought. There were people writing papers about the connection between rage and rheumatoid arthritis. So these things were known. And then you had the biotechnical revolution that came along that did solve a lot of problems, but also created incredibly profound blind spots, right? They said, if I can't prove it, it's not true, which is totally insane when you think about it. So you're just basically hijacking possibility. Like, you're basically saying, I will never discover anything that I can't already see, because if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so there's this incredibly limiting aspect to the randomized controlled trial, which is it kind of controls for emotions. In other words, they don't include the data about emotions because that would complicate the simplistic data that they're looking for, right? And part of that data involves that the mind and the body are completely separate entities, which, as we know, is a ludicrous idea.
Ridiculous.
They're not separate. That is literally a linguistic problem. We're saying they're separate because that makes it easier for us to understand them, or to bifurcate them and say, well, I'm going to put this over here while I cook my meat. Then I'll cook my vegetables, and then we'll put them together, and then there'll be a meal. But you can't
It doesn't work like that. It might
No.
work like that in a meal, but this reminds me, it's funny that we brought up Ram Dass, because this is exactly one of the things he says, which is the whole metaphor of the drunk guy looking for his watch underneath the street lamp. So the drunk guy is looking for his watch underneath the street lamp, and he's very, very, sort of like desperately looking for it. So he draws people in, and a couple people, now 3 or 4 people, are helping for him to look for his watch under the streetlight. And somebody says to him, "Where exactly did you leave it?" And he goes, "Oh, I lost it out there in the alley." And they said, "Well, why are you looking here?" And he goes, "Well, this is where the light is." And it's like, to me, it's like the same exact thing. Like, she's not going to be watching this, so I can say it. I have a sister-in-law who's thinking about getting my nephew back surgery. And I said, how can you do that, considering what I've taught you and what we've already experienced with him, with the pain going after he had a conversation with me and then it coming back? And she goes, "Well, because I have to do something." And I'm like, and so I feel like that is what this bifurcation is, Michael. It's like, well, we have to think some way about it.
I have to do something even though I'm blind, even though I have no fucking idea what I'm doing.
But the deepest thing is that everybody and all the doctors know this, and the ones that come forward, it's like, this is not news. This is nothing new that the mind and body are connected. This is not some kind of
like it is. They do. They pretend that it's not, because they're scared of talking about it, because they haven't been taught about it, and they haven't been. It hasn't been a part of their teaching. Like Dr. Clark says, he thinks in his 6 years of rotations, he had 1 2-hour lecture about the emotions, and yet he discovered this on his own. And I, there's 2 things I don't want to forget. So I'm gonna come back to this idea that, like, all these people in different fields is confirmation that they're finding it themselves. One of the problems is, though, they're all finding it themselves, but they're having trouble connecting with each other. So you have Dr. Clark, who's talking about it from a gastroenterological perspective. You have Mate talking about autoimmune. You have Nadine Burke-Harris talking about poverty and stress. But they're also focused on their own message, that they're not saying, hey, we're all saying the same thing. We need to do this revolution together. And I think that's one thing. But then I wanted to get back to Ram Dass, which is, he tells this really interesting story about he was lucky to find a guru who basically called him on his bullshit over and over and over again, until he realized.
Remember about the cookies?
Well, that's exactly it. It's the cookie story where he was, I know had this purification thing, and he went and he had to go do some paperwork in the city, and he went and he ate this cookie, and he felt guilty because he was supposed to not be doing it. And then he goes back to his guru and he goes, "Did you enjoy the cookie?" And he's like, "Ah!" But if we could all be our own guru and say, I can't remember her name now, but is it true? Am I really being truthful with myself? Right? Is this what I really feel? Or am I saying this because...
That's essentially what happened to me. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I'm going right back. You became your own guru in that moment, and you continue to do it. Now, sometimes we need a therapist, or we think we need a therapist. But the truth is, if we can just be radically honest with ourselves, and we don't have to be radically honest with everyone else because they can't take it. We just have to be radically for you.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But the problem, so I think one thing a lot of people then face is, they're like Saul, who became Paul, struck down with this knowledge on his road to Damascus. And then he has to tell everybody else, even if they don't want to hear it. So they want to cut off his head. So the point is, we are radically honest with ourselves, but we also learn to quickly assess whether or not someone else is able to take it. And if not, the teacher just stands there mutely until the person is ready to. The point is, if people aren't ready to hear it, we can't force it on them. We can give them the cookie. We can give them the information. Right. But we also have to check in with what does that make us feel? And if it challenges us, we also have to be careful about that, because then we get into conflict, and conflict is also conflict with ourselves.
Yes. A lot of big, deep thoughts, because they're also related. It's also related to this stuff. And I think that anybody who's interested in looking in this direction. So I want to just finish with the answer to your question, Tova, which is that, what if journaling doesn't work for people? So the first thing I want to say is, you got to get the belief in line. And sometimes when people say, I can't believe, I said, well, this is a good way to get to belief. Connect with your desperation. Desperation leads to surrender, and surrender leads to belief and to truth. If you are feeling as if you're trying everything and you're so frustrated, nothing works. And we've all been in those moments where you throw your hands up and you say, I don't even care anymore. Yes, That's where I want you. I want you. I don't even care anymore. Whatever. I'm just doing this. I'm not looking at the medical model for 30 days. And I'm just doing this. I'm going to do this once a day for 30 days. And I'm going to do a science experiment on myself the way Nicole did. And it kind of answers Debbie's question. How do you stop your mind from going back to thinking maybe yet another doctor might help me? And the answer is because you do. Because you choose. Because life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse in everything. I recently saw a meme. Go ahead, Michael.
I just want to say that you check in and recognize that that's actually a pattern of fear talking. It's not a pattern of belief. So you're falling into the trap of fearing that there's something bigger, which is why it's helpful to go to a doctor who does understand these things, who can say to you, no, this is definitely like the symptoms don't correlate with any of the disease processes they're telling you, because they'll tell you, oh, you have X, Y, and Z, but they're only looking at one aspect. And Dr. Sarno would go, no, well, it doesn't make any sense, because all right, so if you have a degenerated spine here, it wouldn't hurt on your left side. So they're lying to you, right? If it's here, it wouldn't be there. It couldn't be on both sides if you have it over here. Plus, it's soft tissue, and it doesn't actually do that anyway. Maybe if you have a fracture, yeah. But go ahead.
What's beautiful about this work is even if there's some acute pain or acute inflammation, I mean, we are human beings. We're a live creature. We re-inflame. There's an acute pain. It's real. Like, even if there's some pain happening, it's not normal for it to be chronic. And this work is a way that we understand pain and understand our whole nervous system and our immune system. And let's start talking about cancer and autoimmune disease. This is not just about chronic pain. And this information helps you with everything in your life. It connects you to who you are. It's so soulful. It's so spirited. I mean, Sarno
the idea or the fear that you need to see another doctor is really just a chronic pattern of fear, which manifests itself as pain.
And giving the power to the doctor. Like, okay, he's a doctor, but you're living in your body.
Right. Well,
at the end of the day, listen, we could pontificate on it, but in terms of like the real boots on the ground way to stop fearing it is literally to know that life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse. It's the best possible philosophy for making decisions in your life. Okay. So I often say it for the most trivial to the biggest decisions in your life. So think about it. I often talk about donuts. I love donuts. I think donuts are God's food. Okay. I think they're delicious. I'm obsessed with them. Do I want to eat a donut? Okay. What hurts versus what hurts worse? Do I want the immediate gratification of the donut, and do I want to feel the way I feel when I'm done eating the donut? The most basic trivial thing. And on any given day, I would make one decision or the other. Then, of course, we say, do I want to have a baby? What hurts versus what hurts worse? How deeply do I want to have a baby? How deeply do I want to raise a child for the rest of my life? You know, we all make these decisions constantly, and we never even really sit down and realize there's no third option. There's no eat the donut and don't feel ill if the donut's going to make you feel ill. There's no third option. So this is what I'm saying.
I would say there kind of is a third option. And the third option is to question the why. So for instance, you grew up thinking I have to have a baby. No, you question the why. You ask the question, like, is it true? Right? Well, who's the woman who has that whole program of Is It True? I can't remember her name.
Byron Katie.
But is it true? Like, so in other words, is this desire, like you said, to have children, is that from your soul, or is it from the stories that you were told and the expectations that were planted? It could be both. So then you have
But that's just a thought process. That's not a third option. What I'm saying is when we're going to make a decision, you're going to have the baby or you're not going to have the baby, right? So it's always about...
The difference is, I'm saying it's actually, it's not a thought process. It's actually a beyond thought process. What I'm really trying to get at is this idea that we sit with it and we figure out where is that impulse coming from. So it's not a thought. The impulse, is it a true impulse?
Intuition.
Like, is it our soul desire?
And when you're trying,
so that's what I'm talking.
When you're trying to just
and it's hard to get there.
When you're trying to heal, it's very helpful to just get super basic though, because I think what people are doing is they're
agree.
overcomplicating things a lot, especially when it comes to pain. Like I think what we're talking about now, because the three of us are so well versed in this, what we're talking about is some really like awesome, heady.
You guys lost me. You guys lost me. Actually.
Yeah, well, but that's and it's all like it's like the cherry on the cake of it. It's such amazing stuff. But people who are really struggling with physical pain and they're going from doctor to doctor, I say to you, does it hurt worse to go from doctor to doctor to doctor right now, or does it not hurt worse? Do you choose it? You know, one thing that that I know is
about responsibility. People taking responsibility. I keep feeling like I'm losing. Like, is it hurt or not hurt? Like, what's the point? The person's making a decision. I'm lost a little bit.
The point. Well, she asked a question, which is, how do I stop thinking that maybe I need to go to another doctor? And what I'm saying is, there are two choices here. It is what hurts versus what hurts worse in every situation. It's very simple if you don't complicate it, which means either it hurts worse to keep going to doctors. And so then in that case, when you really align with that, you choose to do the work and you go, well, then I'm not going to entertain that anymore, because I'm a big girl and I know that I get to make choices, and there's one choice is going to hurt worse and one choice is going to be a better option. And so I think that what I help people do is to sort of get out of that cycle of doubt by saying, my work has a 100% misery back guarantee. Anybody, I'll give you back your doctors, I'll give you back your thoughts, I'll give you back your churning perseverations anytime you want. But if you choose that it just hurts too damn much to keep doing what I'm doing and expecting a different result, maybe I'm going to do this thing. Maybe I'm going to suspend my disbelief. I'm going to do the work to get my emotions out. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to try the meditations. And that's what happens. People start changing, because what happens is they finally suspend their disbelief because they throw their hands up in the air and they say, it hurts worse to continue doing that left, right, and center thing I was doing before. I'm going to go do this. And then their body becomes their proof. And that's when I really got you. When you start doing the work. And oftentimes I say to people, do the 28-day challenge. Write down your pain, whatever it is, if it's IBS, if it's migraines, if it's fibro, if it's back pain, if it's skin disorder, write it on a level of 1 to 10. What is it? For 28 days, do what I suggest, which is be in the right mindset. So mindset could be listening to TMS podcasts, being here on the TMS roundtable, watching All the Rage, whatever it is that your mindset is, be in the right mindset. So that's believe. Do 20 minutes of journal speak a day, followed by 10 minutes of loving kindness meditation, because the things that you might need to say in journal speak are ugly. They might be inappropriate. They might be things that you would prefer not to be the kind of person who would say. So do the 10 minutes, forgive yourself, and then if you need help with self-compassion, look up Dr. Kristen Neff, do work on self-compassion and do that for 28 days. And then I want you to go back to your number and say, what's my IBS now? If it was an 8, is it even a 6? Has it had any improvement? If the answer is yes, you know that it's not about getting another supplement. It's not about getting another procedure. This is the way. And when people start using their body as their challenge, that is the proof that they need. And that's when they're off and running.
Something new.
Yeah. And you made me want to tell a story I don't think I've really talked about much, but when I was stuck on the floor in my office for the second time, because a lot of us go through this, we find some level of healing and then it comes back and you're like, okay, now I got to really do the fucking work. And there was a point where I was I knew my sister was worried about me. So I was trying to send her a text saying I'm okay, because it was like day 3. And each time I lifted the phone, I had this it was almost like razor blades across my arm. I dropped the phone a couple of times.
Yeah.
And so I had to take a deep breath and say, what is it? And it's like, oh, I am sending this note because I'm concerned that she's concerned.
Right.
So that it was about making sure that here I am, I'm stuck on the damn floor and I'm more worried about how she feels than I feel. And once I was able to recognize that, okay, that's what it is, typed it just fine. So the point is that pain can be really just trying to tap you on the shoulder. Hey, buddy, you're still doing the same shit. Hey, I'm not. Whack!
It'll keep screaming until you listen. Yeah, for sure.
Until you listen. And then when you recognize it, you actually can do the thing that you didn't want to do because you've changed your intention. Because now it's no longer, you're not doing it in a rage or like repressing that. You're like, okay, let me think about this for a second. Actually, I'll wait 10 minutes, let that need go. And then it wasn't a problem at all. And it was really instructive. So the point is if you listen to the pain or you pay attention when it happens. In fact, it's funny, I was looking back in an old interview with Dr. Sarno that didn't put in the movie, but he was talking about how he had a migraine and he went and looked at this data that said, oh, it was connected, and he thought about it, and he couldn't think about anything that it was. Later, he knew exactly what it was. But in that moment, you may not know exactly what it is.
You don't always get to it, yeah.
But you don't even have to. What he said was, I never got one again. The point is, if you acknowledge it to your body that you know that there's something, just even the simple acknowledgement instead of resisting the idea that it is, that can also tell the nervous system, okay, we can stand down.
Right.
And I think it's interesting too. It's also all the stuff is about linguistics and framing. So
you're talking
Dr.
a little bit
Sarno
about presence process. Also, you're mentioning about the messenger and the message, which is great stuff.
Yeah, but this, like, we also want to hold one firm belief. Like, so Dr. Sarno said, it's a distraction, right?
Right.
But maybe the pain is actually the other part of your body screaming at you to pay attention to it. I'm trying to tell you, you can't do this. Not saying distract you, but another part of you is distracting yourself. So it's that war within. And if we just like say, okay, kids, like you have your two kids, you're fighting. You like hold them apart for a second. Let's try and figure out what's really going on here. One part of this and one part of this. And
great
actually,
analogy.
if you just integrate the two, you can recognize if you're at war with yourself, you're never going to get anywhere. So you have to be the leader that brings peace to the body.
It's so what Nicole said. It's all about you. It's all about like you. Pain is a message for you. Pain is a mirror. Pain is a window. Pain is to teach you about you, and you brought it to your life. I mean, this is what Bernie Siegel says. You bring it on yourself. You bring it to you. It's your karma. It's your tikkun. I mean, it really is. And it can be a gift. I want people to, this is harsh, but I want people to feel like it's a gift. It's a wake-up call, says Joe Dispenza. It can be anything you want, but it's not a bad thing. And you know what? Who said, it was one of our shows said, we're in our life, we're taught to think pain is bad.
It's just information. Pain is information. If you're not ready to see it as a gift, that's fine. I didn't think it was a freaking gift when I was in it, so I don't blame anyone for not being able to be there, even though in retrospect, I will tell every single one of you guys who's listening, you potentially will eventually look back upon it as it is a gift. But even if you can't see it as a gift, please see your pain as information, which is what everyone's saying.
Good point.
Which is a good point, but I want to highlight the idea that if the idea that the pain is a gift enrages you, then maybe you need to check in with your rage. Like if someone's trying to offer you a gift and you take it as if they're attacking you, maybe it's time to think about how much rage you have. And you're like, well, I don't have rage, but that pisses me off.
Alan Gordon threw Dr. Sarno's book across the room. Remember? His mother brought him the book and he threw it across the room. Alan Gordon.
No, it was
Alan Gordon also.
I think probably several million people have thrown Dr. Sarno's book across the room. I don't think that's probably a unique experience.
I want to answer Michael Goldberg, who's in Israel, and a good friend of mine has been on our show because he has an amazing Sarno healing story. But this is his question for you, Nicole.
Yes.
Can you see the whole question?
I can't see the whole question.
Okay.
I see.
My healing process was a combination between the emotional work, journal speak, and rewiring my brain and how I respond to pain, from Gordon and Trubner. Nicole, I'm curious your view on the importance of the latter in addition to the emotional work.
So latter meaning rewiring the brain and how you respond to pain. I think it's incredibly important. So the mindset of healing for TMS, I think the best mindset for healing is apathy. Now, people really struggle with this. And when I say apathy, what I mean is it doesn't matter to me if I hurt or not. Now, people, I know, so don't come at me. I understand, because people say, of course I care if I hurt or not. And this is the best way for me to explain it. The nervous system and the brain, but let's just stick with the nervous system, reads desire to be different than you are as fear. Think about it. Anytime you need to be better, different, you can't wait for something to happen. That if you really sit with that feeling long enough, the nervous system is reading fear that I'm not okay right here, right now, exactly like things are. And unfortunately for human beings, because we're so full of wanting to be other than we are, that's giving a lot of fear. That's putting a lot of fear and a lot of discontent and sometimes rage into the emotional reservoir. So the best mindset around pain, and I do, Michael, think it is incredibly important to be cognizant of your mindset, is, I'll give you an example. One of my symptom imperatives is a headache. And I will get a headache and I will be able to, like, my brain will go, oh, why do I have a headache? Oh, I didn't sleep well enough last night. Why do I have a headache? Because I wore that ponytail for too long. Why do I have a headache? Because of the bright sun. It doesn't matter why I have a headache. The most important thing for me to do when I have a headache is go, all right, whatever. I guess I'll have a headache today. So what? If I can do that, and if I can really align with it, I check back 5-10 minutes later, it's gone. Sometimes it even leaves in the moment when I can do that. Now, obviously, that's not something we can all do, but we can all aspire to it. And once again, in the theme of what hurts versus what hurts worse, how much payoff are you getting from desiring for your pain to go away? Like what's it doing for you? It doesn't protect you. It doesn't make you feel better. Quite frankly, it makes you feel worse because you're spending all day being like, oh,
but God. I get so much attention.
Then sit with that. Then that's something really important for you to understand. What's the payoff for your pain? My payoff is that I get attention. My payoff is that I'm more comfortable asking for help. My payoff is that I feel like I can do self-care. I know I speak to all the moms out there, especially mothers of young children. What's the best way to finally take care of yourself when you're dealing with young children? You get a headache, so you have to lay down. You get a migraine that's so blinding that your husband has to do whatever you ask him to do. Like, this is important stuff to really look at and I'm not trying to only align with women. The same thing happens with men. The same thing happens with people of all ages, but it's important to align with that. Michael, go on.
But I think also, well, there's a couple things I want to quickly address. One is that gets difficult because a lot of people would then say, but I don't want the attention. I just want it to be normal. But there's a part of them that probably didn't get taken care of in the way they needed. And so they're like, you see this a lot on Twitter. There's a lot of sympathy seeking versus empathy seeking. And sympathy seeking is, oh my God, my fibro is going crazy. And everyone's just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And so they're seeking sympathy, but empathy is different. Empathy is like, I understand. And but it also, I understand. And here's some thoughtful thing that might help. But when you're sympathy seeking, you don't want to hear anything, but if you're not going to say thank you, or I hear you, shut up. And so if that's the way you're feeling, it's an important thing to question. But I also want to address, Jill brought up saying, I've been doing the journal speaking, but it's not working for me. But Jill mentioned, you said, I did not have any trauma during childhood, but did have trauma in an adult when my son almost died. The thing to remember is, like, there's this really important quote from Dr. Mate, who says, if you say that you've had a perfect childhood, then you almost certainly did not, because nobody has a perfect childhood and nobody escapes trauma from childhood. So when we say, oh, I had to find, there was nothing there, we're probably somewhat disconnected from the things that were difficult in childhood. And that doesn't mean, like I said, they may be very small T trauma. Like, I had very loving parents who tried to do the best they could. They were psychologists and a social worker, so they should have been great at their job. They were kind of terrible in a lot of ways, and they fought like insane people without trying to do it out of the way of us, and they did the best they could, but it wasn't great. I've always been kind of aware of both truths, but it's really hard to look at that idea that they didn't do great without attaching blame and then feeling like then I'm blaming them and that's not okay. So the important thing to think is, what, my parents weren't perfect and that's okay. I'm going to try and think about having empathy for why they weren't perfect. What kind of traumas did they have? Oh, right. And that's weird because I'm holding this idea that they should be perfect because they're parents, because that's what they needed to be when you're really small. You need them to be perfect. And if they're not, that is traumatic, right? Like if they fail you, that's heavy. But you also can't deal with it, you have to kind of end up taking care of them. So these things are really complex. So I would say to anyone who says, oh, well, I didn't have any trauma in childhood, that's actually probably the place not to look carefully, but to just sit with, find empathy for your parents, because then you might have more ability to find empathy for yourself and not expect yourself to be perfect. And once
Also,
you can allow yourself,
I'm going to interrupt. Wait, I'm just going to say it's also not you. We're not going to heal because we find the source of our pain. We're going to heal because we're going to accept the pain and move the fuck on. Excuse me.
Well, it's both things, but also accept that your parents weren't perfect. It's hard to move on if you're still holding this space that they should have been perfect. No, they're human.
Like, don't spend your time looking for the source. Like, just be in the solution of getting out of moving through the pain. I mean, so that's
what I'm saying is one of the solutions is about also changing the patterns of our relationship. So if we change the expectation that our parent be perfect, then we also hold on to this. Like I had this experience where my mom was difficult, and I went on a trip with her, and I was actually reading Eckhart Tolle's book that was A New Earth, that was all about empathy. And so I would do what she needed to do because I wasn't going to like fight with her, but I did it with an internal energetic resistance that I was kind of aware of, but I thought, okay, you can't see it. But we get the energy that comes through. Even if we think we're hiding it from somebody, dude, they get it. Like they totally know when you're withholding. So when it came time to rent the car and she was all anxious about it, I was like, really, whatever you think is best is fine. And then she went, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. When she finally felt heard, not that I was just doing what she wanted, but she really needed to be heard. When she felt heard, then she was fine. And the whole trip was fine. And it's this really simple energetic shift, but it also means not just acquiescing to their patterns and saying, okay, I'm going to get stuck in that drama with you. Instead of saying, I'm not going to force you into drama. I'm just going to be like, okay, whatever you need, without repressing what I need. You just find a listening space, and then they actually don't need it so much anymore because they felt heard.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Michael.
I want to respond to Jill's question.
Yes, the last of the question, because she's really talking about emoting.
She also followed up with, I'm not saying my childhood was perfect. I'm saying I didn't have major trauma. So that's essentially what Michael's saying, that little t trauma is like death by 1,000 paper cuts. You don't have to have any major trauma. It doesn't actually matter at all. Some people who have major trauma work through it so well that they don't actually have TMS about it. So it's really not about comparing trauma. It's just about knowing, Jill, that doing this work is the whole. So let's go back to our primary purpose. Okay. Doing this work is to inform the brain and the nervous system that we don't need diversion or protection by these physical symptoms. We can feel our feelings. That is like the most basic way to understand what we're doing here, whether it's through talk therapy, through talking with friends, through journaling, through meditation, however you're getting there. The primary purpose is we are informing our brain that it is safe to feel these feelings, that our repressed emotions are not a greater predator than our physical pain, that we are not going to die from feeling our feelings. So when I read the question, okay, hold on, it's going away. When I read Jill's question, what I hear, Jill, is that you're very scared and you're frustrated and you want to feel better. Okay, you've been doing this for several weeks. So I don't know how old you are, Jill, but I'm assuming you're more than 3 months old, which means that if it takes you years and years and years to walk into the woods, you're not going to walk out in several weeks. And honey, that's okay. That's the way it works for all of us. We're human beings. If your nervous system and your brain were to listen to you, I promise you, you would already be dead. You know, one of my favorite stories about the nervous system and our fight or flight response is I was in London about 10, 15 years ago, and I was chatting with whomever I was with, and I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and the road looked clear, and I stepped out onto the road because I wasn't looking in the correct direction for the double-decker bus that came barreling. By the time I was back on the curb, I felt the air of the bus almost pass through my nose. I would have been 1,000,000% dead. Now, do I remember getting back on the curb? Zero memory. My nervous system and my brain put me back on that curb before I had any idea what was going on. So what we have to understand about TMS is the brain and the nervous system will protect you without your permission and without asking your opinion. And so if you're doing this for several weeks, your brain is like a small child that's been abused in whatever ways. You're not just going to say, all right, come on, it's all done now. Come on, let's time for a cookie. Everything's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. It takes time. It takes time because what we're doing here is we are taming the fox. It's like the scene in The Little Prince. The fox says, if you want me to be your friend, you need to tame me. You need to show up every day and you need to say, I journal speak for 20 minutes today and nothing came out. I guess that's what today was all about. A whole lot of nothing. Yeah. Let's do it again tomorrow. Okay, babe?
Yeah.
We're here. We're together. Mind, body, and spirit.
Good advice.
I think your story is really profound. And there's one small other aspect I want to add, because Ashok Gupta tells exactly the same story. And he's this guy who cured himself of chronic fatigue and came up with these same concepts. And he says, when you step off a curb, it's your amygdala, the walnut-sized part or the almond-sized part in the middle of your brain, which jumps you back. Now, here's the really important part. At that point, your amygdala checks in with your brain, your thinking brain, and says, our bus is scary. If you go, yes, buses are scary, now your brain's like, okay, I got it. Every time you see a bus, stress hormones.
Yeah.
Because now it takes that physical thing and turns it into an emotional threat, because it's not really a physical threat.
Right.
Really,
if
your brain says,
connections.
Right. And it's doing it because you're writing the code. So you have to unwrite the code. You have to look at the things. You have to notice when you're feeling anxiety and say, okay, is this actually scary? No, not paying attention. I've got to be more mindful and more present.
Right, exactly. That's what's really scary, not paying attention and being more present. And quite frankly, that has been, for me, just as an aside, one of the biggest things I've learned through this whole process is really my biggest problem is I move too fast and I don't pay attention. And that's the real predator. Beautiful. That's what's going to kill me in the end, if I am to be killed. And so, that, and when we learn this work, we can stop going to those lower vibration buses are scary place, just for the use of the example. And we can start understanding the real reasons for our struggles. And that's when you really start to elevate your game.
Excellent.
Right. And if you the really super important part of that is that the bus becomes an emotional threat. Just like, the first time you have your exam in college, right? You're really conscious of being nervous and you take the exam and you're like, God, that was hard. Now, the next time you walk into class, all those stress hormones just pulse into your body, even if you're not having a test, because that place is a scary place that had a bad feeling to it. And so if you aren't conscious of that, so the part is, again, back to being mindful, is when you feel those feelings, is it true? Do I need to feel this? Oh no, let me retell my brain, I don't have to feel that. I'm safe. And so when you start to be able to bifurcate the emotional threats from the physical threats, and then recognize actually the physical threats aren't as physical as they may seem, because maybe you saw someone get mugged once. That doesn't mean that you're in mortal danger of being mugged every time you go outside. Because if you look around, you'll see the threats and you'll cross the fucking street. If you're paying attention, it is much less likely to happen. So it's learning to be more present in the world when you're in the world. And then if you need to go in your head, do it in a safe space where you aren't going to get hit by a car, eaten by an alligator, or punched by your mom.
Yeah. So let's answer a few of these questions. Mia has a question for Nicole. Nicole, can you see the question?
Yeah. So I have a question for Nicole. What about the situation that your symptoms started in childhood? Of course, it can still be TMS. Yes, of course. Listen, the human body is such a mystery, and we have so many things that happen to us that doctors say, it could be this, it could be that, I'm not sure. And that generates a lot of fear and a lot of meaning and a lot of rage. And so, of course, yes, the answer is just undeniably a situation that starts in early childhood can absolutely be TMS. We experience trauma from the moment that we draw breath. And also, let's normalize the word trauma for a moment. The word trauma is not a dirty word. It's not a negative word. Many people think the actual act of being born is a huge trauma to a newborn baby.
It is. It
doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's just trauma. It's an upsetting experience that needs to be comforted. Some babies are able to be comforted quickly. Some babies aren't. This has a lot to do with our natures and our sensitivity and, our level of empathy and all these things that are more spiritual questions. But yes, there's no age too young for it to have been
Right.
begun as TMS. And TMS tends to be a snowball, right? So it could start when you're very young, and it could create in you sort of what Michael was just saying, the kind of brain that is firing and wiring to a lot of danger. I know a lot of kids that had trauma early, they might not continue to be traumatized as they grow, but their perception of the world is that it's not a safe place. And that continues to add insult to injury. And that needs to be excavated as an adult in this way that we're saying, in order for it to bring the system from fight or flight to rest and repair and allow these symptoms to stop firing.
Very good point.
I want to give you actually a corollary to that story, which is that my younger daughter was having a lot of problem with air sickness and then bus sickness. And it happened on a plane, and then a couple weeks later on a bus, and then it was happening on the bus on the way back. And my wife was really smart, and she went, "Oh, that's so great. It always happens 3 times, and then it doesn't happen again." And it didn't. Until last night, actually. She threw up last night, but that's 10 years later. But the point is, the point is that it set that intention and that idea. And so for the person who said, I've had these symptoms since I was 3 or 4, if they were immediately medicalized and you were brought into a doctor and it was turned into this thing, then your brain learns, okay, there's these threats, and it learns to do that. And it's not that you're attention seeking or whatever. It's just you learn how to respond to the world, and the way you respond is that these things are scary. But if you learn, like, oh yeah, people get sick and they get better, and kids especially, they get sick and they get better really quickly, Mm-hmm. So we see that and we go, oh yeah, that's, we don't, if we mirror not fear around it, then we're less likely to transfer that thing that every sniffle is a death knell.
And you know what also I want to add to that, because I learned this through my own daughter as well, and it reminded me. So my daughter had a terrible bout of anxiety, not last summer, but the summer before COVID. And it became so severe that she was nearly agoraphobic. She was having panic attacks. She didn't want to go to school. And what we ended up doing is putting her in therapy. And the therapist said one thing that was the transformative thing that she needed to hear, which is the human body responds to anxiety in the exact same way that it responds to excitement. There is literally not one change in the biological process that happens through a body when you're excited than when you're anxious. It's your perception of the situation where you know if you're excited or you're anxious. She said, so what we're going to do is we're going to play with it. And when you're feeling this anxiety, I want you to pretend that you're super excited for something. And I want you to feel in your body, it's the same sensations, the same dryness in your mouth, the same pitter patter in your heart, the same butterflies in your stomach. And it totally transformed the pathology of the situation for her. And she's now, off at the beach with her friends, doing things all the time. I mean, it's been a while since she's been better, but that is so important for us to understand as human beings. Our perception is our reality. If we are assuming something is dangerous, it is dangerous. There's no difference. Our perception becomes our entire world. And so it's really important to keep checking into your perception of things.
Very good. This is from Diane. Can you see it, Nicole?
I can see it. This is more of a testimonial than a question. She's saying, I've been on this healing journey for 30 years and recently realized that it's mostly in my head. What will say that, Diana, will say it's mostly in the genesis of the brain science is the reason I was sick. It's not in my head. You're not making it up. But she said, it's exciting to watch Nicole speak about her journey. It sounds so much like mine. I had an intense migraine Saturday morning, had a major cry, and it was gone for the day, I believe. Wow. And that is 100% true. And that's the reason I want to say something about journal speak. Journal speak is not just a journaling practice. Journal speak is a second language. What I'm looking to teach you is not just to journal. What I'm teaching you is how to tell the truth. What I'm teaching you is how to learn the second language. So, for example, today, on this very day, I'm not having any physical symptoms today, but I'm going through some stuff in my life that's causing me some stress. And on my walk today that I was taking to exercise, I decided not to put in my AirPods. I decided to journal speak in my mind. And I actually spoke it out loud when nobody was looking because I don't want to seem like a complete psychopath. But what I was doing was I was just saying the truth. I was telling the real truth. And I came up with a couple of things. And if you really do it, you really do come up with things that you're like, man. And I honestly, I'm such an open book. I would say it right now if it comes to me, I'll say it. But it was some stuff that like looked like, oh, I know what it was. it's funny that we just brought up Charlotte. So Charlotte's my daughter who had the anxiety. And when she had her anxiety, I went through tremendous anxiety with her because I am way too attuned to my children, which is, I'm just admitting it. And so and I just think, oh, she's anxious. I'm anxious. I'm too empathic. That's the surface truth. When I was doing my walk today and I was getting down to the deeper truth, I said, God damn it. It's been 20 years and you are still looking for these kids to rescue you, aren't you?
Oh, wow.
Because you just want her to be happy so you can relax. And it was like, although that's not as revelatory as maybe the first time, those little truths, they take a ladle.
Yes.
They take a ladle and they take a dump of liquid out of the reservoir. They're skimming it off all the time when I have those little revelations. So maybe the headache that it was due for Sunday at noon is not coming, because what Dr. Sarno always said is, you're not going to get the symptom to fire till your reservoir reaches maximum density.
Right.
We're all feeling things all the time. It's not like we're always in chronic paralysis of pain. It's that if you keep dumping in and you don't take out, you're going to reach a point where it hits maximum density. And as it threatens to inform your conscious mind of how much repression you have down here, that's when it almost spills over, and that's when you get the symptom. And so it's really about kind of keeping your side of the street clean by continuing to keep an eye on what's really going on.
Very good. So Ray has a very important question about tinnitus, which I'm in complete agreement that it's TMS.
It's a challenging one. I will agree that the people who have had tinnitus that most of the people who struggle to get rid of tinnitus are people who really, really hate it. They are so angry about that tinnitus. It's because it's with you all the time. It is a rageful. I believe tinnitus is deeply connected to rage.
And I believe it's their voice in their ear. It's their own voice in their ear.
I think, okay, so here's the thing. Can someone speak of tinnitus? Here's the first thing I'm going to say, which is always something that makes people want to kick me in the teeth. Tinnitus is back pain. Back pain is migraines. Migraines is fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is your stomach aches. The way it expresses itself through you is immaterial. A symptom is a symptom, and everybody experiences different things. And to me, there's some place in that where you have to give it up to, we don't really understand why certain things come out in certain people. We only understand 6% of the brain, 8%, whatever percentage we are at in 2021. So I do believe that tinnitus, although it is so difficult because it's so constant and it creates so much discontent, it's no different than any other TMS symptom. It's just the way it's expressing itself through your body. Do you disagree with that, Michael? I saw you putting up the finger.
No. I was in a band for a long time, and I have ringing in my ears all the time. I almost never notice it.
That's the thing.
And when I do notice it, it can occasionally bother me, but it's very occasionally, and I have to sit with it for a minute. And so for instance, it may happen at night when I wake up, I'll notice it. I'm sorry, my computer's about to die.
Well, no, come back, Michael, come back. Would you say, Nicole, that if she can accept the tinnitus, and it has gone away. I've spoken to Ray. It has gone away sometimes. It does get lower and lower. So when it's raging in her ear, it's a message.
Listen, here's what I will say to you, Ray, and I say this with deep compassion and love, so please don't hate me. If you didn't care that you had the tinnitus, you wouldn't really have the tinnitus. It would be like Michael. It would come and go. I have spent my entire life listening to way too loud stuff in my ears and going to way too many live concerts. And I also have a ringing in my ears when I pay attention to it, when I notice it. And the thing is, so what? Right. I also have floaters in my eyes. Okay.
Wow.
And the thing with the floaters that's so fascinating is, like, on the days that I really see them and I start saying, oh God, it's so distracting, that's the days I see them more. And in the days where I see them, when I just go, yeah, who gives a shit? I have floaters in my eyes, look around them, I stop noticing them and I don't see them for weeks. And it's so precious. Like, it's so tender because I feel for you. Nobody wants tinnitus. Nobody wants a symptom. But the problem is, just who cares? And if you can just go to whatever, my body's doing its thing. I'm doing the best I can. If you can work with tremendous compassion for yourself, I'm a human being living a human life. There's a lot of shit that goes on. I've got relationships, I've got obligations, I've got self-consciousness. Oh my goodness. Oh well. One of the ways it's coming through is tinnitus. So be it. I guess I'm hanging with my tinnitus today. What's up, man? What are we doing today? If you can take yourself a little less seriously, and if you can bring that kind of mindset, I can't tell you how much healing happens in that space.
It's beautiful. So let's finish with Jill. She's just wants following up with, we talked to her about, because she's not feeling any feeling, and that's what her concern is. Like, can you address that?
But this is the thing. I want us to go back to Jill, to what I said. Jill, honey, you're obviously upset about this. Who cares? Just do your journal speak. Chop wood and carry water. Left foot, right foot, breathe. If you had a puppy that you rescued from the shelter, and every time you went to pet the puppy went like this because somebody's been hitting the puppy. So maybe the first 30,000 times you lift your hand to the puppy, it's going to duck down. You just have to sit and be. And I think the problem with all our TMSers is that we want to do it right. So she said, rage on the page. Why am I not raging on the page? What's wrong with me? I'm doing it wrong. I'm the one who got it wrong. I've always been the one who got it wrong. My mother always told me it was never going to happen for you, Jill. I'm just kidding, Jill. I don't know if your mom said that, but you can see my energy. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. If you show up for yourself like that little puppy, and every day you just gently lift your hand out with the food, and you open your arms and you say, when you're ready to get into my lap, you will. It will happen. It just takes time. And we have to be outcome independent, which is very hard for people who are TMSers, because we're usually very type A. We want the payoff. We want it now. If you can become outcome independent, if you can do the work to do the work, if you can, like I said, chop wood, carry water, left foot, right foot, breathe, be in the space of your healing and let go of needing it to be different, you will watch transformation like you can't believe. Wow. You know, there's a quote that I very often quote. Her name is Danielle Laporte, and she has a book called White Hot Truth. It's just kind of like a light, sort of a beachy read, but it's a good book. And what she says is, can you imagine not wanting to be different than you are right now? And then she says, take a breath. Can you imagine not craving to be different than you are right now? Because here is the sacred paradox. Transformation begins with the radical acceptance of what is. Transformation doesn't happen.
Say that again. Transformation begins.
Okay, so here is the sacred paradox. Transformation begins with the radical acceptance of what is. If we stop fighting everything or everyone and we just say, I'm just doing my journal speak today. What will be, will be. Either I'll rage or I won't. Either it'll feel like nothing or it'll feel like something. Whatever, so be it. I'm just doing it. That's when you open the door to transformation, because you're not spending all your energy trying to be anything. You're actually replacing your fear with curiosity, which to me is another thing that is so super important in this work. Stop being afraid of what it might or might not bring. Be curious. I wonder what I'll find out today. Looks like I found out nothing. I wonder how that's going to feel. That feels frustrating. I wonder what I'll do with that frustration. Will I take it out on someone? Let's see. I mean, just open the door to being curious about your life rather than being so afraid of what you might be or who you might offend. And
why is it so hard to accept? Because this is loving what is. This is bifurcating. Why are we all struggling to accepting? This is the bottom line. Radical acceptance. What are we? Because we're fighting. We're used to fighting. The brain just knows fighting. It doesn't know peace, love, and Woodstock. Like, this is really what the bottom line is.
Go ahead, Michael. You can take that one.
Well, I think what you need to recognize is that's the war within, because to accept it means you're giving up what you think is safety, and safety is like we have a really nervous cat and a very confident cat. The confident cat runs up to people when they show up. The other one runs into the closet and disappears for sometimes days, right? The one that runs up to people is safe. The one that runs in the closet feels not safe, but they're both in the same environment. So if we feel that being present and honest is unsafe, and that can happen because, say, we were present and honest as a child, and we got in trouble for it a lot.
Right.
And so we learn, okay, I'm just going to shut my mouth up and I'm just going to be here because that's the only way to stay safe. And if you do it before you're fully cognizant, it's really hard to unwind because that feels like who you are. And to change who we are feels extremely dangerous. So when you're saying, well, why can't people just be in acceptance? Well, to be in acceptance is to be unsafe. And it does take some work to recognize that and unwind it.
And it goes back to, it just goes back to Gabriel Mate's talking about, and this is the IST DTP work, is that we sometimes have to choose attachment. We lose our authenticity when we are detached from our childhood. Remember attachment and authenticity? Gabriel Mate talks about that we had to choose. And we couldn't be authentic because that type of thing.
So I want to talk a little bit about what Michael was just saying, though, about like, I think another thing people think is that they have to overcome something about themselves. And I really think we need to replace words like overcome or get past with integrate. Right. Because this is not about denying some part of yourself or being different or becoming anything. I use this example of the kindergarten carpet. So picture when we used to sit on a kindergarten carpet. There's room enough for everybody, okay? And so when another kid came in the room, everybody just scooted back a little bit and make space for Johnny. He's got to sit down on the kindergarten carpet. I want you to think of all these parts of yourself, of your fear, of your anger, of your moods, of your whatever. Is just another part of yourself. Make room. So this is how I get to radical acceptance. When I'm feeling anxious, like I don't come to anger easily. And I know why, because I had a very angry father. So I know why I don't come to anger easily. But I come to anxiety and fear and sadness easily. So when I'm having a day where I'm really annoyed and disappointed with myself because I'm too anxious or I'm too scared or I'm pre-grieving, I'm already deciding what happens if, right? I'm doing that. Instead of saying, don't be that way or get over it or get past it, I just scoot back on the kindergarten carpet and I say, Nicole, who's really scared that everything's going to get ruined, come sit down. Come sit down. Be with us. Sit with us. Enjoy the day. And it just brings, that's what acceptance is. Okay, it just brings the energy of everything down a bit. We're not looking to get rid of her. One of the quotes I love by Elizabeth Gilbert, who's one of my, like, one day I want to be her best friend. Elizabeth Gilbert, come be my best friend. She says the way we have to talk to fear is like fear is a screaming toddler. So you put it in the back seat and you strap it and you say, listen, we're not leaving you here. You can come. And we're going to put you in the back and you are welcome to come on the whole journey. And nobody is telling you that you're not welcome. But you can't pick the snacks and you can't map the route and you can't drive the car. But you can come. And if you scream and kick the whole time, that's beautiful because that's your job because you're an upset toddler. But that's how we talk to fear. Make room, invite it in, bring it along, but it doesn't pick the snacks, it doesn't map the route, and it doesn't drive the car because if it does, then we are always at its we're following fear into the dark night. But if it's just with us and we say, hey, this is a human life. There's no stepping over our fear. Our fear is adaptive. Our fear is the reason we're alive because there are certain things that you have to be afraid of and that's how we avoid them. So, there's just so many ways to continue looking at this to allow you to keep on the journey.
Yeah.
Right. And that brings up a really good point about pain, right? And we have pain because if we don't have pain, we're going to cut ourselves and bleed out, right?
Right.
And so pain is a physical manifestation of something that we should be wary of, right?
Right.
But if we start to have pain for emotional reasons, we're not going to escape because we're going to constantly have these emotions and it's actually not protecting us from them, right?
Yeah.
So once we're able to kind of parse it out and see it, I mean, the definition of pain is a physical and emotional response to tissue damage or the perception of tissue damage.
Mm-hmm.
So while our definition acknowledges both the emotional and the physical aspect of it, our medical system does not. And that's the thing that gets crazy where, like, again, back to that idea of all these studies about the MRIs that say that you shouldn't pay attention. In fact, all of the guidance, if you look at any medical statement or paper, it says don't do MRIs for localized back pain.
Mm-hmm.
It says it over and over and over again. they're just not listening. I mean, that's what the science says, but they're not listening because they fear the patients, and they fear the bad reviews they'll get, because if you don't give a patient a pill, the patient's going to give you a bad review. It's just a fact.
Which is why this is a bottom-up healing. This is going to each come from each one of us, because you're not going to get this information generally from people that you're looking at to fix you. And I think that this brings up another point, which is the rage that comes when it turns out you have to fix yourself. You know, that's a big thing. You know, this is not, you can't give away your power anymore and heal yourself. This is about taking back your power. And people, you know, ostensibly say, oh, well, of course I want my power back. Oh, but do you? Because then it becomes your responsibility, and people get very frustrated with that. But I like to say, let's just open the lens a little wider and realize what a gift it is if you can affect your own life. It's still annoying and it's still a heavy burden, but it's a huge gift. And, you know, I always say my life is my message, because look at me. I went and had a third kid. My daughters overpack for everything, and I dragged those heavy suitcases up 3 flights of stairs on the regular. I don't have a problem with my back. Like, it's a gift that's worth fighting for in your life.
Right. I think also, you know, that word responsibility seems so important to me, because so much of the time we resist being responsible for somebody else's pain, which we're not. Resist, you know, responsible for anything, right? And but if we switch it around and we change that word and we make it a response ability, an ability to respond rather than react, that's like the most powerful thing you can recognize. Because when you find yourself reacting, that's when you have to step out, back to the presence process, Tova, but step out and say, okay, this is about me. Because we always want to be like, you made me angry. No, you're angry. That person did something.
Nobody can make you feel anything. Nobody can make you, if you don't already have it in there to feel, nobody can make you feel anything.
Right. And they can do something that can piss you off, but that's about your framing. It's about your expectation. So the more we start to peel out our expectations, well, yeah, I do expect you not to do that. Well, you know, where did that expectation come from? Because I'm not going to just acquiesce to what you want me to be, you know? Right. So, and we can often see it happens in childhood, the expectations that are formed. What is our family culture? What is our family culture? What is our social culture? What is our national culture? And how all these things interact, you know? So the more that we're able to just kind of look at it and, like you said, radically accept that that's just the way it is. And that doesn't mean we have to acquiesce to it. It means though that we can respond to it in the most productive way. So for instance, if you feel rage about everything that's going on in the country, it's probably not the most productive way to respond, right? The most productive way to respond is to recognize it's happening and figure out, how do you communicate in ways that don't actually spark more rage? Right. How do you, find more knowledge? How do you help other people see greater wisdom?
Well, and speaking of that, I often say another one of my Nicoleisms, which is life is a behavior modification program. You can never think your way into better feelings. You have to act your way. So you can sit at night and think all night about this and that and what's wrong. But if you get up in the morning and you do the next right considered action, one thing that could be, like I said, listening to a podcast. It could be doing your journal speak practice. It could be taking a walk in nature. It could be so many things, but the point is we can act our way out of our pain, but thinking our way and perseverating and just getting upset about it, it's not going to help. Right. And I always bring it back. Once again, I'm all about primary purpose. Do you want to feel better? If you want to feel better, there are steps that you can take. And it's, to me, that's the beginning of the whole thing. And I'll speak to autoimmune disease. I know that you wanted to read it. I'm not a medical doctor, so I cannot say whether or not this work will cure autoimmune disease. I don't have the credentials to say it. So all I can give is circumstantial evidence, which is I know for a fact of many people who have done my work, who have diagnoses like lupus, the rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's MS. Disease. I don't know anyone who has no MS symptoms. I'm speaking. Right. I have to speak from my own experience. Yeah. Even though I will say about MS, I have a dear friend who swears by my work and tells me that when he does my work, his MS doesn't flare. So I can't say that this work will cure autoimmune disease. Maybe somebody can. I just can't say that for me. But what I can say is I know enough situations where people have a diagnosis and maybe whatever came to make that diagnosis is still present, just like my MRI will still show a severe spondylolisthesis in my spine. They don't have the symptoms of autoimmune disease.
Right.
And that's the point, isn't it? I mean, it's all about how do you feel today?
I want to go back to what I was just talking about, because I think there's this really interesting connection. And again, Gabor Mate talks a lot about the autoimmune diseases. And I think there's one really important factor about autoimmune diseases, which is something that ties them all together. There's no known etiology. Mm-hmm. None of them have a known etiology. You can point to Lyme and say, well, people have the Lyme bite and then they get the symptoms of Lyme and then they stick around forever. But they have no known etiology. But almost all of them say that stress will exacerbate it.
Right.
They'll all say that stress can't cause it, and that's not possible that it could cause it, but it will exacerbate it. And they will say that they can't. Now, I met a woman whose daughter had lupus, and she asked me if I thought it might be connected. I said I think it probably could be if you listen to Gabor Mate and other people. And then I went and looked at the lupus website. The lupus website stated, lupus discriminates against women. Right? So women get it twice as much as men.
Yeah.
Especially African-American women. They get it 4 times more than white women. Latino women get it 3 times as much, and Asian-American women get it twice as much. So if you put that on a piece of paper, you see men, women, and then these different races. What you're looking at, I think, is what we can agree is a relative chart of privilege. So if you look at it in that way, then that's some pretty clear data that there's a connection between the demand of repression, the relative demand of repressing our emotions in order to stay safe in our environment. You can see it there. I mean, that's some very profound data. So if we look at that data and we go, that makes some sense, and we look at there's no known etiology, but the part of the reason that there's no known etiology is they've never found a physical system of the body that causes it, but they're absolutely positive that it's not repression or stress. Which is, to me, ludicrous, because that's not very scientific to say we know it's not stress when we know that stress exacerbates it. It's kind of crippling.
It comes down to, we're going to always go back to primary purpose. What's the only thing that matters? The only thing that matters is how do you feel today? Because if you wake up and you feel freaking great, then this whole conversation is a waste of your time. So
yeah, well, you're not watching.
Right, exactly. So how do you feel today is the only thing that matters. So if they stamp a diagnosis on my chart, I don't care. It's how do I feel today? So if I am diagnosed with lupus or I'm diagnosed with, any number of autoimmune disease conditions, and I'm going to do this work, and through this work, I'm going to bring myself into such a space of expansiveness and peace and connection to my highest good. And I'm going to figure out what happened to me, and I'm going to make space for it on my kindergarten carpet. I'm not going to deny any parts of myself. I'm going to practice radical acceptance. All the stuff that comes on this journey, I'm going to practice self-compassion, which I never would have before, but now I am. Then who gives a shit what a diagnosis is? Who cares what you have? And so I would say if anyone out there is struggling with an autoimmune diagnosis, set it aside. Don't throw it out. Just put it on the side burner and do the work. Do the work with belief and patience and kindness for yourself, with the intention of healing, knowing that people have gone before you that have healed. And that's the best thing I can say about autoimmune disease.
Wow.
That's a pretty good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably our longest show, and I'm really thrilled that lots of people have shown their beautiful souls that I haven't seen in a while. So Baruch haba, welcome. To Nicole, will you come back for part 2?
Sure.
and yeah, you have to come back and meet Rosie, and we can have a really interesting talk about attachment and good luck and best of luck. Like, anybody has any connection, Nicole's trying to get on Oprah Winfrey's show.
Oprah will call one day, but I want to say, forget Oprah, even though Oprah, I love you. If anybody wants to, I get a lot after I do these things. I get a lot of people saying, I want to work with you. I don't do private practice anymore. There's too much demand. So what I've done is I've moved it into a retreat model and an online course model. So if people want to do my work, just go to my website, thecureforchronicpain.com. I have a course called Freedom from Chronic Pain and a second course that I created this past year called Freedom from an Anxious Life that's specifically about anxiety. And I'm doing a retreat. It just so happens this is gonna, oh, it's live. Okay. And it'll also be up somewhere for people to watch. I was about to say, when is this gonna air? So my retreat is at the Omega Institute in upstate New York, in Rhinebeck, New York, which is about 2 hours from New York City. And it's August 1st through the 6th. And enrollment is still open. It might fill up soon. So if people do want to come, I would say jump on that. But all the information's on my website, thecureforchronicpain.com.
Great. Wonderful. I love it. And you can always come to TMS Roundtable and find information. This will be on our YouTube tomorrow. And Nicole, you're always available to people, which is wonderful. So it doesn't matter how popular you're going to get. You're in the game. You're in the game, and you're on the field helping us. You're on the kindergarten carpet. Beautiful analogy.
I'm the kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for coming. I know whenever I call you, which is once a month to come, you tell your wife and your daughters and all the cats, they want me again. So bless your soul. And your face looks great. No swelling. You look terrific. Anyway, I'm going to bring us down to the studio and then put our intro, our say goodbye with our little thing I'm practicing. So I'm going to bring you down. I'm going to hide this like this.